Hello guys, my name is Stan. Welcome to another video. Do not forget to like video and subscribe this channel.
Bitter coffee and broken silence. The kitchen smelled like burnt toast and second chances that morning. Sophia Reyes stood barefoot on the cold tile floor, her dark hair still loose from sleep, watching the coffee machine sputter like it too had forgotten how to function. Outside, the city of Porto was already exhaling its grey morning breath against the windows, fogging the glass in slow, quiet sighs. Noah Castellan came downstairs in a wrinkled grey shirt, his blueprints tucked under one arm, eyes half open, looking for his keys with the mild panic of a man who had already lost the morning before it began. "There's coffee," Sophia said without turning around. "I need to find the Harlow file first." "It's on the counter. I moved it last night." He stopped. Something in his jaw tightened. "You moved it?" "I was cleaning." "Sophia," his voice had an edge. "I told you not to touch my files." She turned then, holding the warm croissant she'd picked up from the corner bakery at 6 in the morning, the one he loved, the one she'd walked 15 minutes in the cold for without being asked. Her fingers tightened around it. "I was just cleaning the table," she said quietly. "The presentation is in 3 hours and now I have to reorganize everything." The words came out fast, clipped, with the brutal efficiency of someone who didn't mean to wound but did anyway. "Honestly, Sophia, sometimes it's like you don't think." The silence that followed was the loudest sound in the apartment. Her hand released. The croissant fell. It hit the tile with the soft, pathetic sound of something irreplaceable breaking, scattering flakes of golden pastry across the floor like little pieces of the morning they were supposed to have had. Sophia looked at it for a long moment. Her throat tightened. She had not cried in front of Noah in 2 years. She was not going to start now. She bent slowly, picked up her jacket from the chair, her keys from the hook by the door, and walked out without a word. Noah stood in the kitchen holding his blueprints, staring at the croissant on the floor, and felt the specific, terrible cold of a man who understood exactly what he had just done. The city swallows her whole. Porto in the early morning rain is one of those cities that seems to grieve alongside you without being asked. Sophia walked fast at first, heels clicking sharp against the wet cobblestones of the Rua das Flores, her jacket pulled tight, not quite crying, not quite breathing right either. She didn't know where she was going until she was already there, standing in front of Myra Song's bookshop, Terceira Lua, which didn't open until 9 but where the lights were always on by 7 because Myra believed that books deserved morning light as much as people did. Sophia tapped the glass. Myra appeared from between 2 shelves like a small, precise ghost, her black hair pinned with a pencil, her reading glasses pushed onto her forehead. One look at Sophia's face and she was unlocking the door. "Sit," Myra said, the way a doctor would. Sophia sat on the worn velvet chair between the poetry section and the window, and for a few minutes said nothing while Myra made tea on the little stove in the back room. The shop smelled of old paper and cinnamon, and slowly, the tightness in Sophia's chest began to loosen. "He said I don't think," Sophia said finally. Myra set down the tea. "Noah said that." In that tone. "The one that makes me feel small." Myra sat across from her, curling her legs beneath her, wrapping both hands around her mug. Was he scared about the presentation? "That's not an excuse." "No," Myra agreed. "It isn't. But it might be an explanation." Sophia stared at the rain sliding down the window. "I woke up at 6 to get him that croissant." "I know." "He didn't even see it." "I know." They sat in silence for a while. Outside the rain thickened. Inside, between the poetry shelves and the warm amber light, Sophia pressed her palms around the teacup and let herself feel all of it, the small specific grief of being misunderstood by someone who is supposed to know you best. "Do you still love him?" Myra asked eventually. Sophia didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands, at the faint ink stain on her left index finger from the logo project she'd been working on all week, and thought about the way Noah always traced that stain with his thumb when they were lying in bed together, calling it her secret tattoo. "Yes," she said quietly. "That's the part that makes it hurt so much." Blueprints of regret. Noah stood over his drafting table at the studio and could not see a single line clearly. The Harlow presentation had gone fine, as it always did, because Noah Castellan was the kind of architect who could reconstruct his own composure in the elevator ride up to the 14th floor without anyone knowing he'd lost it. Dante Walsh, his senior colleague and the only person in the office who did not pretend that work was the most important thing in the world, appeared beside him at 11:10 with 2 coffees and the expression of a man who already knew something had gone wrong. "You forgot your lunch again," Dante said. "I'm not hungry." "I didn't ask if you were hungry." Dante set the coffee down and leaned against the edge of the table, studying Noah the way he studied load-bearing walls, looking for the crack that explained the lean. "Want to tell me what happened, or do I have to ask Sophia?" Noah exhaled slowly. "I said something this morning. Something stupid." "How stupid?" "She walked out." Dante made a low sound that wasn't quite a word. He picked up one of Noah's sketches and studied it without really looking at it. "There's a particular kind of stupid," Dante said after a moment. "That happens when a man is afraid of failing at something that matters and he turns that fear outward. I've done it. My first wife left me over it." Noah looked up. "The thing about fear," Dante continued quietly, "is that it wears everyone else's face before it admits it's yours." He set the sketch down. "What are you actually afraid of, Noah?" Noah was quiet for a long time. The studio hummed with its low machinery of industry, keyboards, printers, the faint sounds of the city 9 floors below. "That she's too good," he said finally. "That one day she'll just stop waiting for me to catch up to her." Dante nodded slowly. "Then I'd start with an apology." The language of closed doors. Sophia spent the afternoon trying to design and mostly staring at a blank canvas. By 4 o'clock, Myra had gently pushed her out of the bookshop with a bag of leftover almond cookies and told her to walk until something made sense. Porto's Hills in the late afternoon have a way of doing that. The light turns amber and slow, and the tiled facades of the old buildings begin to glow like lanterns, and for a little while it becomes possible to believe that beautiful things are still possible. She found herself on the Miradoro di Vittoria, sitting on the stone wall above the lower city, watching the River Douro catch the last of the light. She thought about the way she and Noah had stood in this exact spot 2 years ago, just after he'd found out he'd won the commission that changed his career, and how he'd picked her up off the ground without warning and laughed into her hair. Meanwhile, 3 kilometers away, Noah stood outside her studio building on the Rua do Almoda for 20 minutes before deciding she wasn't there. He tried the bakery on the corner. He tried the park. His phone felt useless in his pocket because an apology delivered by text would be an insult to what had happened. The city does this sometimes, keeps 2 people orbiting each other without ever touching, the way planets do, following their own invisible gravitational grief. It was only when the sky had turned the deep, bruised violet of early evening and the street lamps flickered on one by one along the waterfront that Noah, almost by accident, turned left instead of right near the Miradoro steps, and looked up. And there she was. Sophia, sitting on the stone wall with her jacket wrapped around her shoulders and almond cookie crumbs on her sleeve, looked exactly the way she always did in the moments he loved her most, unguarded, a little windswept, entirely herself. She saw him at the same instant. Neither of them moved for a moment. Then, very slowly, he began to climb the steps toward her. What the Croissant taught them. He stopped 1 step below her so they were at the same height, and for a moment neither of them said anything. The city spread below them in its amber and violet evening glow, and a warm wind came up from the river smelling of salt and old stone. "I was looking for you," he said. "I know." A pause. "Myra texted me." He almost laughed. Almost. Of course she did. Sophia looked down at her hands. "I walked 15 minutes in the cold this morning. For that croissant." "I know." His voice was low, stripped of all its morning armor. "I know you did. And I didn't see it. And I said something that had nothing to do with you and everything to do with my own fear, and he stopped. Started again. "I am so sorry, Sophia." She looked at him then. His eyes were very dark in the evening light, and she could see in them the thing she always saw when his guard was fully down, that specific rawness of a person who loves you so much it frightens them. "What were you afraid of?" she asked softly. He was quiet for a moment. "That you're too much for me. That you're always a little ahead of me. In your work, in your heart, in the way you see things. And some mornings I wake up terrified that you'll figure that out." Sophia was quiet. The city breathed around them. "Noah," she said finally, "I walked 15 minutes in the cold for a croissant for you. The only person who is somehow still not convinced that you're worth walking for." He closed the distance between them then, his hand coming up to cup her face, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw with the careful reverence of someone handling something they almost lost. She leaned into it, her eyes closing briefly. When he kissed her, it was slow and certain, the way you kiss someone you have decided to keep. Her hands found the lapels of his jacket and pulled him closer, and for a long moment they stayed like that, two people above the lit city, held together not by perfection but by the willingness to return. Later, back in their kitchen, they remade the morning without speaking. Noah swept the last of the croissant crumbs from the floor. Sophia put the coffee on. They sat together at the table in the warm lamplight, and Noah reached across and traced the ink stain on her finger. Slowly, like always, calling it her secret tattoo. "We should keep the croissant tradition," he said quietly. She looked up. "Even when we fight." "Especially when we fight." Outside, Porto settled into its nighttime hum. Inside, the coffee grew warm between them, and the morning that had almost broken them became instead the thing that taught them where to hold on.